Order 66. From the moment we first heard Palpatine order the order, we didn't know what it meant, but we do know what came after. And now we've gotten many different viewpoints of it. But maybe
I was gonna say we know now because it's been shown like
one of the most doing the interrupting of the intro thing. That's what we're doing. Welcome everybody to the Resistance broadcast. I'm John. Thank you for joining us today. Yeah, so we're going to talk about, as you saw in the title, just the importance of Grogu's experience with Order 66, and we'll expand upon that later in our main discussion. So it's going to be one of the serious dive into the story discussions that we do here on TRB. We like to balance things out. Balance of the Force, balance of the pod, fun stuff, serious stuff, but it's all
super
about
serial.
enjoying Star Wars. But John here with me as always is James and Lacey. What's going on, guys? James wants everyone to know that he can predict the weather. I don't know if everyone out there knew that.
For anybody knowing, I dropped a little tidbit on him about the whole when a weatherman says
He's talking about your
80% chance
headaches.
of rain.
No, your headaches.
Oh, my headache. Well,
Yeah.
I dropped that one too. No, sometimes you get headaches when there's like low pressure, high pressure.
Yeah,
I
that's
get
a
high
normal
pressure.
thing. Pressuring, you
Yeah.
don't sleep well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's
And
that
for
crazy.
some reason, it's always when the three of us are on a call together. You get those
Yeah, it's
headaches.
weird.
I don't know. Yeah, strange. So Lacey, what's going on with you? What's new?
Literally nothing. But I'm here to talk Star Wars, so it's a good day.
Great. All right. Before we get
It's not a
going
bad
here,
thing. It's just
Great.
a normal day.
Yeah.
Sometimes normal days are needed, you know? I have nothing
that is
going on.
Bill Lumberg, Lacey. I'm like,
Wonderful.
I get my terrific. Before we get going here, just a reminder to everybody: if you are down, like we are with Gentle Giant, and you like what they got going on over there, check them out.
Oh yeah.
And if you want 20% off their entire in-stock items, you can use the promo code RESIST20. We paired with them to do that and get 20% off. So it's pretty cool. And then, of course, we have our coffee at Weird Brothers. So go to weirdbrothers.com and look up the Resistance Brew. Always good stuff there. And, of course, our YouTube channel. We are growing. We had an awesome time with Greg Grunberg. A lot of people found us through our Mandalorian trailer reaction.
It was a crazy week, actually.
So yeah, we're having a great time in this new channel. Thanks to everybody who has been jumping over and supporting us there. Of course, if you listen to the podcast, not much has changed in terms of where you find that. But also subscribe to the channel because we're doing a lot of other cool stuff there in addition to the podcast. So youtube.com/@theresistance broadcast. Let's see if we can march closer to 2K subscribers as we aim at our big goal of 10 million subscribers. So baby steps. But we're going to get into the
slowly
I didn't know-
disappeared.
Go ahead,
What?
James. What?
Oh, just people saying like 2K and then the year. That's slowly disappeared, right? Do people still say 2K23?
No, it was always just a single digit. So 2K5.
No one ever said 2K. I've
2K7,
never heard
yeah.
someone say that.
Oh, there's an entire like franchise of video games based on it, like
Yeah.
NBA 2K12 and all sorts of stuff. But I feel like it's sort of died off, right?
Yeah. Yep. We're hitting you with the good stuff today to kick off a Monday.
Just something to think about,
all right.
guys. Just something to think about.
I haven't
Yeah,
thought about 2K in a while. You said we're headed towards 2K. There you go.
Yeah. All right. So we got our main discussion later. We have a pod race coming up as well. But before we do that, I just wanted to kind of get into some of the biggest questions out of that Mandalorian trailer and speculate on them, because we spent a bunch of time immediately reacting to that trailer and just our minds spinning in a tornado as we were trying to process we were watching. But now we've had some more time to think about some of this stuff. So I'm just going to fire out these questions. I know the two of you know them because we have the notes, so we're not going to sit here and pretend that these are off the cuff. But
I also helped come up with them, so.
one of them, yeah.
Well-
They can guess which one.
Oh, really? Can they?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm saying if they want to. I'm not saying they will. But,
Oh.
all right. So to kick this off, the first one being, who is in that Fang class fighter? And I know when we were watching, I was like trying to piece together that there was Sabine, but then Clayton had sent us that photo of the toy that paired Bo-Katan with one of those, but it's also called affiliated with Clan Ren and their Mandalorian protector. So it could be a bunch of different people. So the question is to you guys, who do you think that is? Do you think it's Bo-Katan? Do you think it's Sabine? Do you think it's someone else?
The bigger question is, who is running over John's head?
Yeah, sounds like there's a kid in the background.
Yeah.
Just joking.
So I don't know if we want to knock out some of the obvious ones, but I have a sort of off the radar guess.
I'll take it. Go ahead.
Axe Wolves.
Oh,
The other
interesting. Yeah,
the
the guy that we didn't see in
missing-
season 2, right?
Yeah,
Or
the missing one.
Later in season 2.
I feel like somewhere along the lines I picked up that he was back. I think he said that on social media. He's like, "Oh, the character's not gone. Just wait," or something along those lines. So I think that hinted that he could be back for season 3.
Right.
And these two characters, Casca Reeves and Axe Wolves, they felt like sort of close guardians of Bo-Katan. So I could sort of see while she's in her palace, you got these other Mandalorian protectors, I don't know. So I'm kind of taking a guess that maybe it's him. Considering we got Casca in the last season, let's switch it off. Let's focus on this other character. So that's a guess from me. And I think it's a little out of the blue because it's not on the top of mind of most people.
Is that a sort of devil's advocate alternative guess, or do you think that's who it is?
I am thinking that it is that person because I'm trying to go with what makes the most sense and not like the I hope it's, because I do hope it's, a Sabine. I do hope it's something else, but while that could be cool, I don't want it to be just like a random Mandalorian fighter. I don't want it to be, even if it was Bo-Katan, it would be cool, but there's something about the way it was flying around and stuff. I don't know. It felt like it was side to that. I don't know.
All right.
So I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say that that's that character.
All right. Lacey, how about you? What do you think?
I thought the Sabine idea when we were talking on the live stream was like really cool and a really interesting way to introduce her, because that's the big question, I think, for a lot of people is like, where is she showing up? Because they have to introduce her before they get into Ahsoka, I think. And I believe we all think that she's showing up anyway. Like, I know I said it a while ago, but I think we all think that. So I think she's a really cool option, but I'm probably going to default to Bo-Katan only because it seems like a very obvious choice. And
Safe.
While it's cool, well, I wouldn't say safe because it's no matter what, it's an awesome character. Flying really cool. But I just feel like by throwing out like all these other cool options, I don't want to set myself up to be like, oh, it is Bo-Katan. Whereas like if I go in expecting Bo-Katan and then it's not, that's even cooler.
Yeah, you're right. Safe isn't necessarily the right word, but I mean safe in the sense of that's the most
straightforward.
Logical, straightforward answer. Not like we don't want to be too risky.
Yeah.
I don't care. I've said stupid stuff on the show for 5 years. I'm not stopping now.
John, who's your guess?
It's tough because I do think it's Sabine. And I know that's a risky guess.
Would you bet a pie on it?
Nah.
Come on.
No, we still have other pies. I gotta cash my pies in. I gotta hit you guys in the face
understand
with
that, but
some British pies.
We don't have any. We don't have any pies outstanding. So
yeah.
We'd have some outstanding pies.
So I think Sabine, Bo-Katan could make sense, but I don't know. It feels like boring to me. I don't know. And she feels kind of like sitting on that throne and stationary right now.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. It's a weird way to say it. I wasn't really sure. I was like, she's over here is what I was trying to say. But she does feel like she's
and who
in
knows?
Her palace. She's stationary. Yeah.
This could take place in the final episode. We really don't know. It could be a low leverage character, like James was saying with Axe Wolves. But also, it could be the Mandalorian. Something might happen to the N1. Maybe Hasbro, they're thinking like, "No, this isn't going to work out selling these things." I don't know. We need him to have a more viable ship. So I don't know, but I'm going to say Sabine because it seems like a really cool way to introduce a character. Like one of those, like, who is that? Like where that ship comes out of nowhere to save Mando, and then the TIE, he draws the TIE fighters away like Maverick. Who is that person? And then if it's like Bo-Katan, they're like, oh, all right, that's cool. But if it's like, oh, when that cockpit opens, almost like, Patty Jenkins introducing Rogue Squadron in a sense. Like, what is she doing? Why is she putting on the flight suit? And then you see the X-Wing. You're like, oh my God. It's like that big reveal that could be very cool because say the cockpit opens, helmet comes off, you see purple hair, and you're like, oh no, that's wild. So I'm sticking with Sabine. It's going to be wrong, but I'm going to have fun thinking it's her until it happens. And then I'll appropriately adjust as you should. All right. Next one is, because a lot of people, I know I was like Coruscant on this one, but a lot of people are saying like, well, it could be blank, blank, blank. So in that shot of Dr. Pershing, our little nerdy friend who likes to take Grogu's blood and do some cloning stuff, is he on Coruscant, Chandrilla, Hosnian Prime, or somewhere else? Lacey, I'll start with you on this one.
I think he's on Coruscant. I think I'm going to sound stupid if it's not, but to me, it looks pretty straightforward that it's Coruscant because it goes from those moments right to the Grogu 66 moments in the trailer. So they're either trying to make you think it's Coruscant or it's Coruscant. Yeah, I kind of think it is because they already have those assets from Rogue One, or not Rogue One, Andor. So it's like, oh, we can just use what we've already made and just have them go there, and people like Coruscant, and that's where kind of the Emperor was operating out of, and it makes sense that all these like pieces are falling into place. So if Coruscant was kind of the center of everything, that doesn't mean overnight it would then change from being the center of everything. So
I'm going to also say Coruscant. I'm echoing those reasons. Palpatine's like Sith headquarters was there. There could be things they're looking for in the Jedi Temple ruins for cloning purposes. Hosnian Prime would be cool just because it's like we didn't get enough of it. It came and it went quite quickly in live action. Chandrilla would be interesting to see that in live action. Has a lot of history there. But in terms of this story, and maybe they'll prove me wrong with explanations, Coruscant seems to be the right pick. So, James, what do you think? Are you completing this trilogy here on Coruscant, or are you looking elsewhere?
I am completing the trilogy. Coruscant for me.
Hey, look at us.
The interesting thing is
that
like
was the most unenthusiastic "hey, look at us" I've ever heard.
Would you want me to Paul Rudd it?
What is
you want to get a chicken wing and get all endearing on you?
No, but you're just like, look at us.
Lacey, look at me. Look at me. Look at us.
Right in the eyes. Right in the eyes.
Look at us.
I'm the captain now.
Who would have thought 5 years later? Not me. Not me.
I mean, there were some moments in there.
No, let's see, here's the thing, is like if the gamble was, is this Coruscant or anywhere else, I take anywhere else, but when you look at the list of it's Coruscant, Chandrilla, or Hosnian Prime, I think Coruscant has the most likelihood for the exact reasons. And it's kind of funny, I thought maybe I would have some insight on that, but you guys said the exact thing, so I'm like, all right, I guess we all must be thinking it. Yeah, it just seems like Coruscant was like a big hub for a lot of things, and we haven't really seen it in the last really like 25 years or so. And so who knows where it's gone down.
Prequels.
But as the New Republic came in, they're like, we can't make this our headquarters. It doesn't seem clean anymore. So I have a feeling that if there's a bad city, that to mess around with or whatever, it probably is. There's shady stuff going down in Coruscant. So that's the one I got to go with. I think people messing with this type of stuff would have more issues on Hosnian Prime because it's just too, like, in the spotlight.
And it seems like, I mean, Favreau's writing the show, but it seems like Filoni is really enjoying this element of taking prequel aesthetic and putting it over on this timeline. You know, we have the N1, we have the B1 battle droids now, and now maybe Coruscant. Like, that's pretty cool. And you know, George Lucas probably loves that because he loves his prequels and he loves what he'd created for them. So it seems like Coruscant's the one, at least for the three of us. And let us know what you think. You know, I know a lot of people out there are tossing around other locations, and it made me think about it. So it's a good question. All right, last one here.
This, by the way. Go ahead, James.
I was just going to say, it's almost a bummer that Mandalorian doesn't take place after the sequel trilogy, because then you could throw in a little sequel trilogy things into the mix too and see it all kind of come together. But we're missing that because it hasn't happened yet, timeline-wise.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is my favorite thing about Star Wars, when we're at a point where everybody's just speculating and you're getting like the craziest ideas and the craziest things that like you can never consider because there's no answers yet. So everybody's in the same boat of just throwing everything out there. It's my favorite thing about Star Wars, being a fan.
And then every once in a while, it like the crazy thing hits, and
you're like, what?
Oh my God. Yeah. All right. Last one here before we head to our pod race. And then we, of course, have our main discussion later about Grogu. So to warm up that a bit, who is behind the door in Grogu's Order 66 flashback?
Hondo Ohnaka.
Oh, okay. So we're locking James's pick in for Hondo.
Lacey said it's the time to throw out crazy things.
It's time to get crazy.
I actually asked this on Twitter, and I got some crazy ones that I was like, oh, I didn't even consider that. But then I got some pretty straightforward ones.
I'm going to say I hope it's Anakin, and I'll explain why I hope it's Anakin. It's not for the fan service. I'll wait for the main discussion to get into my points about that. But James, what do you think?
I don't know that I've really thought about it too heavily, more than, I just hope it's Anakin. I remember when they had this big setup of who's going to be the person who was opening up the doors that rescued Din. And we were all like, oh, it's going to be this person and this person. I mean, I was like, I think it's Yoda. Yoda makes sense to me because of this reason and this reason. And it all felt so logical. And then it was just like a random Mandalorian person. And I mean, not random in the sense of like, obviously it was part of this, and that, you know, it makes sense that it would be that type of a Mandalorian person, but it's not like we know that person. It was just a Mandalorian, right? And
Death Watch, right?
Yeah. But it was like, I don't know. It almost feels like it was a little bit disappointing because it wasn't someone that you really expected, and it was good. It didn't take away from the story or anything. But when we're looking at this door thing, I go, I don't know, man. I don't want to try to do all the math and figure out all the reasons of why it could be so and so and so and so. I'm just gonna guess Anakin, because he was the one running around, possibly cutting down doors and trying to kill people. So I don't know. I'm going to say Anakin. It's probably just like a stormtrooper or something, you know?
Yeah.
Clone trooper.
All right, Lacey, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with everything James said. I think, you know, I didn't even consider it until James had brought it up on the stream because there's just so much going on that like you just start chiming through, like going through, checking things off of like what you've noticed. But it clearly looks like they're trying to cut open the door. Now, the question is, are they cutting it open with a lightsaber like we've seen in the prequels and other places as well? Or is it just like some type of like, we're opening the door with this kind of like, I don't know, hacksaw or something like that because it's sparking. Whereas what we've
sparky versus melty a little bit.
Right. Whereas in the prequels, when Qui-Gon Jinn does it, it like literally like melts off the wall. But that being said, it would be cool if it was Hayden. And despite what John said, I think I would love it because it's fan servicey, because it doesn't even have to do anything. He can just open the door and be like, I have other things to do, and like walk away. But like just seeing a glimpse of him, I think would be like really cool. But I know a lot of people online have attached the clip from the trailer and then the clip from season 2 of Mando of the stormtroopers and what he had unlocked with Ahsoka. And it's basically the same scene with the same Jedi and troopers. So it probably is troopers, but I'm going to go with Anakin just because I think it would be sick to see that.
Yeah. I think it should be Anakin. It probably won't be. But we'll get into it after we venture from talking about a light side character like Grogu to hear something about a potential dark side actor. So, Lacey, what is our next segment?
Yeah, so our next segment is the Patreon pod race. All right, guys, it's time for the Patreon pod race. There are lots of ways you can support us. You can like this video, comment, subscribe on YouTube to our new channel. We really appreciate it. You can follow us on all social channels at TRB Podcast. That's it. It's the same name everywhere. Very easy to follow. So please go do that. But if you want more than just the audio platforms as well, like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast. Starting at just $5 a month, you get to support us here and what we're doing and the things that we plan to do later this year, like going to Celebration, going to other events, talking about other different content, including Star Wars and also beyond. It's just saying that, hey, we like what you're doing. Keep doing it. You guys are great. And we appreciate it. But as you go up in the ranks, you get different types of access and different types of perks, from a Discord server to live streams and much, much more. This is the part of the show that we let our generals and spice runners take part. So if you want to be a part of it, head over there, patreon.com/resistance broadcast. But that being said, I want to say thank you to our generals and spice runners. So thank you to our generals: CARMELO, John RISI, JETTA Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth HURICANE, Nick KRATZ, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt CHITTY, DANI, Mike RUMORE, Matt HEATH, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Brian, Paul Sullivan, Aaron Ellington, and Diana. I don't know. I said Brian. Brian's not in there. Sorry.
Thank you.
Spice Runners. Thank you. Spice Runners. David PROBUS, Neil SHAH, KENDALL, GELNER, Ryan WAARA, Dave HORNAK, Thomas HENNESSY, Andrew STALEY, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry, who we
thank you.
hosted in our Spice Run, which is another exclusive mini episode only on Patreon with Michael. We talked about Star Wars. It was a really fun time. But this week we have David PROBUS, one of our buddies. So, David, your question, which he has to get a question, then gives us his answer, is what actor, actress do you think would be a great new villain in future Star Wars movies? You can cheat and pick two if you must, but let's see what he said. Go ahead, David.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Of course I know him. He's me. What's up, TRB? It's General Greybeard, or Spice Runner Greybeard, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and just been thinking a lot about villains in Star Wars and who I would want to play a villain in Star Wars. And the one name that keeps popping in my brain is Idris Elba. I think Idris Elba would be a fantastic villain in Star Wars. He was scary as the voice of Shere Khan in Jungle Book. He's got an intimidating presence, but he's also got he's got that charm where I think he could like charm you and then turn around and just like cut your head off. And it would be cool to see him wielding a red lightsaber. So if I want anybody to play a villain in Star Wars, it's going to be Idris Elba, because I just think he's awesome. May the Force be with you always.
Awesome job, David. It's always great to see you and hear you on the show. And I'm loving your pick. James, what'd you think?
I think that it is a pretty solid pick, as he has been in a number of movies already, like as villains. Like obviously he said there he was in Jungle Book, but you got him in the Hobbs and Shaw movie, you know, Black Superman, or that whole thing. Like got the villain thing going on there.
I also kind of the villain in The Office. Kind of hated him.
Yeah.
Charles Minor.
I think that he is an actor who has solidified himself as someone who can be anything you need him to be, while still being excellent. There's a lot of people who fall into a stereotype of like, I'm always the hero or I'm always a villain, something along those lines. I always play this type of a character, you know, anti-hero or something. But he is very excellent at being anything you need him to be, hero or villain. So getting more people like that in Star Wars would be excellent. I also think that as big as the celebrity as he is, I still think he kind of falls into that category where like most people might not recognize him. Like he's It's hard to say that because he's so big, you know. But it's kind of
If
in
you
that
haven't
boat.
seen any of his stuff, then you wouldn't know who he is.
Yeah, you might not. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
kind of come into it and you'd be like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of the guy from Thor. And you're like, it is the guy from Thor. He just looks a lot different, you know?
Yeah,
Mhm.
It's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay, you know. But yeah, great pick. Proby-1 Kenobi. Glad
I
you're
love it.
one of the Spice Runners. It's awesome.
John?
Yeah, I think it's a great pick, David. He's a really good actor for one thing, and I don't know if you watched that show Luther, David, but he's really good there, and he really, there's big IP stuff like Marvel, but there's also drama and serious acting, and he can really flex it there as well. So I think that's something that I think Star Wars doesn't always need, but I think with your villains more than your heroes, you need it. And like Adam Driver and Ian McDiarmid, and James Earl Jones with the voice of Darth Vader. I mean, having a villain with acting chops, I think, is always a good thing, because sometimes it's hard to sell your audience on a villain and can come across really cheesy unless your actor just demands that you respect it. And he's one of those guys where I'm sure if we watched it, we'd be like, yeah, all right. And see, like you said, though, dude, seeing him with a red lightsaber, yeah, let's see that. That'd be really cool. So great picks, man. Good to see you. Can't wait till the next group call. But great job as always, and see you soon. What longest nickname in TRB history? So own it. Later, buddy.
David, this is a great pick. These guys said it perfectly. He's a great actor. He has a wonderful voice. He's super attractive, which is not something I'm hating on. I love attractive villains because it makes it that much harder to kind of hate them. Because you're like, wait, I kind of agree with them, and then you're like, no, I don't. They're terrible. They're terrible people. But anyway, I think he's great. I think your pick was great. You had awesome reasons, and I would totally dig this choice. I know he's been kind of on that like repeating shortlist for James Bond, but I would love to see him as the villain in Star Wars. I think it would be killer. But thank you so much. Thanks for supporting us, being a part of the community. You're one of those guys that everybody loves having you here. So thanks for being that person. And now we're going to head to John.
All right. And I hope a celebration does come closer to you, because I want to hang, man. All right. Now we go to our main discussion, the importance of Grogu's Order 66 experience.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
All right. So, execute Order 66. We heard the words for the first time in Revenge of the Sith. We had no idea what was about to happen. And then we saw what happened. All the Jedi getting massacred, the siege on the Jedi Temple, complete chaos and takeover by the Empire. Now, 17 years later, we have seen many iterations of it in Revenge of the Sith, Clone Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi, now The Mandalorian, and other media too, video games, stuff like that. But it continues to be fleshed out and expand with varying points of view. But it's time now to talk about the importance of Grogu's experience and that memory of that fateful day. Now, we didn't get a lot yet, but it's clearly something that has stuck with him. It clearly seems to be something that has kept part of his brain or memory locked away, whether that's through the trauma of it all or the Force, hiding within him. We're not sure, but we're starting to see him in that new Mando trailer be more confident in what he's doing and be more assertive in what he's doing. And I like that with his facial expressions and stuff like that. We're going to see more of Grogu sort of becoming more of an independent entity, which I think is really exciting. But I wanted to pitch this to you guys because, we don't know for sure from that trailer who's coming through that door. And that's why I put that last question at the top about who is behind that door. And yeah, it probably is just the clone troopers. But either way, I think what happened with Grogu's experience in Order 66 is really important for us to see it, because up until then, most of what we've seen with Order 66 ended with Order 66 for a lot of those people. And not entirely, but like Reva, for example, right? So that was introduced to us from the first frames of Obi-Wan Kenobi. but then that story ended, and we don't know what the future for Reva is. It kind of felt rushed. There wasn't much of a payoff. Whereas with Grogu, we're so vested in him emotionally, it's just different. And I like the fact that, you know, Order 66 happens. There's a lot of devastation, and the galaxy gets turned upside down because of it. And people like think that that's where that type of stuff ends sometimes. And it's like, oh, then people like get over it over time and that sort of stuff. But that's not the case. And you can relate that to real life. Whether people go through, you know, wars, you know, people live with that stuff forever. Shootings or terrorist attacks or whatever. And here we have Grogu well past the victory against the Empire, 9 years later, whatever it is, still just completely twisted up about it. And he's not right. You know, he clearly has more powers than he realizes. Ahsoka alluded to that. And it's interesting to see them give us that perspective that Order 66 still is impacting the galaxy years and years and years later, even after the fall of Palpatine and the Empire. So I just wanted to pitch that out there, that Order 66 still lingers because people are still living with it. And Grogu right now is the latest in the timeline embodiment of that. So I think that's an interesting discussion to have, because he might just be a microcosm of a lot of other beings in the galaxy that are still heavily impacted by that. And him being impacted by that impacts the galaxy because he can do a lot of good. And hopefully we're getting to the point where we're going to unlock all that and he can become the hero that we think he might be. So I you know, I have no directive on this. It's just an interesting thing to think of Order 66 having way prolonged effects than we like to think, because we think Order 66 happens, then there's the Empire, then they beat the Empire, and it's all good, but it's not. So I don't know, Lacey, what do you think about that? Because I know you like to get into the emotional aspect of Star Wars and that sort of thing. And you like to see heroes having the, you know, ride into the sunset. And we I think we'll still get that with Grogu, but clearly he is not the best version of himself yet.
Mm-hmm. Before I get into that, I was just thinking as you were talking through this, John, that the not funny, but crazy thing about this discussion in itself is that I feel like for the past 2 years, if not more, we've seen a lot of reaction from critics and fans alike that have said that the Mandalorian isn't deep, that there's nothing past a certain level of kind of deeper connection, emotion, whatever. And here's the story of a creature that's basically a baby. He's 50, but basically a baby. And he's experienced such trauma that he is unable to not only live his life the way he wants to. He was kidnapped. Now he's been thrown into this whole world with the Mandalorian. It's all he knows is like killing and like doing all these. And people are going, oh, it's so high. Like it's so just action figures in the backyard playing with action figures. And I'm like, there is so many things that are so much deeper than just throwing characters together. And I think this discussion is going to definitely unlock some of that as we go through it. But away from that, I think that it's heartbreaking to watch this character go through these situations. It's not lost on me that it's definitely something that's reflecting current life that we live in, especially in the United States, with children that are experiencing really terrible things and how they deal with it and grapple with those real life situations. So it must be a little comforting to see something reflected in TV, even if it's a creature from a galaxy far, far away, of it's okay to not be okay. And I feel like when we show characters in media and content that are going through these situations, it allows people to feel more comfortable with their own trauma and their own situations where they're hurt or depressed or dealing with something that's much bigger than themselves. And I think that that's what Execute Order 66 in general, like Order 66 as a situation is not only just a terrible, terrible, tragic thing that set off so many different things in the galaxy and then eventually takes our heroes in a certain direction, but it's also showing you how the choices of one person can have so much bigger kind of ripples in the bigger scheme of the universe and galaxy and the world
for generations.
Yeah, for generations. And I think, man, this was one of those moments in the trailer, and I'm sure you guys felt the same way, that it was just, for us, our reaction was like, because first you see the lightsaber, so you're like, oh, lightsabers. But then you realize the situation and you're like, no, because you know what's coming. You know it's not going to end well. And it's got that kind of foggy Vaseline lens thing that they used to do in like the 1920s and 40s and stuff, where it looks kind of foggy. And that's how you know it's a flashback. But the idea that this small child creature witnessed all this death and destruction and still made it out is hopeful. It is what Star Wars is all about. And then he's finding his found family, also what Star Wars is about. So there is some like kind of happiness there. But man, is this season going to get dark? And I think, John, you had said that when we talked about the trailer. It's just like how you felt this season was just going to be overly dark. It's gonna, because you have to deal with all these situations. Mandalore, Order 66, how the world is now.
Everything's on the line. Yeah.
Yes, and we're seeing so much destruction just in the trailer, and the trailer's a minute and a half. We're seeing Navarro basically get torn apart, which James had pointed out. We're getting all these situations where our characters have their back up against the wall and they're fighting for their lives. And then also it's just the galaxy's fighting to get back to what it could have been without the Empire. But this is just a small piece of that, pun intended, because Grogu is tiny, a small piece of this puzzle that I think is just, it's really sad. And I think it's only going to get more sad before it gets better. But I'm interested to see how they handle this moving forward. Like, who saved him? Who's behind the door, obviously? Where does he go for that period of time when this happens to the Mandalorian picking him up? Like, that is a chunk of time that he's just either taken by someone or safe with someone, then taken. Like, is he communicating with anybody via the Force like he did with Luke Skywalker? Like, does he feel like, who has he met along the way, basically, is like one of my big question marks.
Yeah, James, to bring you in here, you know, I don't know that you have an angle on this yet, but like George Lucas, his main thing with Star Wars is you're coming of age, you have a choice to make, good or evil. You're not defined by your past. You know, you can grow beyond your past. Is Grogu in a situation where he has to dive into his past to unlock the powers he learned, but with that comes unlocking all this as well? And is that not the way? So like, and where are you with this in general? Like, how important is this in your opinion, that like us seeing Grogu's experience with Order 66?
Man, there's so much. It's interesting to me to think about how much this piece of traumatic history affects him on a day-to-day basis, because it has been a very long time since it's happened. And I feel like most of the times when we are told more about his story, it seems like it's sort of, if I'm not mistaken, I'm kind of trying to remember this, it seems like it's Ahsoka asking questions or like unlocking something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like these times when he's kind of being forced to think about it, and in some ways probably even kind of help Luke, like, oh, it's the first time I've actually interacted with someone who was there, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know at that
Ahsoka
point.
wasn't there, right?
Well, she was, because she went through Order 66 with Rex.
But not at the temple like he was.
She wasn't at the temple, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's maybe another angle or something. But I'm curious, because I think the question here that we're thinking about is, how does he get rescued from that scenario? Does he get rescued? He doesn't get killed.
Could he just hide in the egg, you're saying? Because he's in that egg.
Well, somebody's to some extent taken care of him for like 20 something years. So the thought is that he's been with a Jedi or something.
Oh my God, he's going to see that person die.
But if the point is that he still has this trauma, then it makes me think that the last like 50 years of his life have been bad. So he's been handed off to people for studying and all sorts of stuff for the past 50 years. So it almost
he
makes me
feels
wonder
abandoned.
if like maybe he didn't get rescued from Order 66, but like when 66 happened, they killed everybody around him and they're like, oh, this is the one we were talking about. The baby that can't fight us and but has a lot of midichlorian ability. And so they take him for research.
But I don't know why they wouldn't kill him though, because they killed everyone else. But they did take Reva. So I guess
what's interesting about Grogu is I'm trying to think of like, because I think this is important when we first get introduced to him, like how much smaller he was even then. He had to have been
little,
like just a freaking baby when this happened, you know. And when we meet him, he's hiding behind his blanket in his little pod, and he comes out from under it and peers.
He's the same age as Anakin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But in terms of his growth, he's at baby stage because his species lives. Yeah. So
but he's like 19 or 23 or whatever it is. He is somewhere in that age group.
And I don't want to
when Revenge of the Sith happens.
I don't want to turn this conversation into a let's guess who saved him or something, but something just dawned on me. For some reason, he decided to trust a masked Mandalorian when he shoots IG-11 and he just sticks his finger out and they touch fingers. Like, was he saved by a Mandalorian? And then when he saw Din Djarin, he's like, "That I trust that." So that's on the table, you know?
Maybe.
And maybe that's
otherwise
why...
you'd be kind of nervous normally if someone shows up in a mask. Like,
yeah, so I'm saying like what if it's someone related to, you know,
well, the line in the trailer is, do you really think your dad's the only Mandalorian? So
yeah, that's true.
So that might pull away from that. The only reason I brought up this is because I'm throwing out the idea that it's not just Order 66. It wasn't like he went through Order 66 and he's been fine and dandy for years.
No, he's not.
No, of course
because
not.
He has this trauma. So it's like I'm wondering if Order 66 was just the first thing that happened to Grogu, and it's been constant, and that led me to we've had this theory of who rescued Grogu out of Order 66, and it's like maybe he didn't get rescued. Maybe what we're going to see on the other side of that door is the villain, but
Pershing or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that'd be a good example. That'd be a way to keep it like tied in with the story,
like a young Pershing, or
it could, who
or
knows?
what if it's Werner Herzog, to bring him back? I'm dead serious.
I mean, it could be, yeah. But someone like in charge of maybe a situation that was going on at the time.
Maybe it's Moff Gideon on the other side of the door.
Well, these people, how old would they be at this time?
Probably in his 20s.
Yeah, maybe somewhere in there. Yeah.
But back on the path though, in terms of like the importance, because they're clearly showing us Order 66. We know he went through hell between then and when we meet him, but they're flashing back to that for a reason, and they're giving us breadcrumbs leading into season 3, as we saw the initial flashback, and now we're going to get more of it, and they're going to expand upon it, and maybe it's something they unravel slowly, like they like to do in those sorts of flashbacks in this type of storytelling. I just find it interesting that like the actions of Anakin are still resonating throughout the galaxy even after his redemption with his son, which goes back to that whole idea that Darth Vader really only got redeemed in the eyes of his son, whereas the rest of the galaxy is like, we killed Darth Vader, we won.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a tricky aspect of it too. And here we have, this little cute baby who is clearly very powerful with the Force,
but doesn't talk.
Right. Almost a decade later, still having massive issues with this. And there's a lot at stake here in the galaxy. Like, they're going to get into this whole Mandalore conflict, but there's this whole other aspect where, whatever's going on with this whole Thrawn thing, and whatever's going with the uprising of the post Palpatine plans, and Grogu could be a massive ally in the fight against that, but it's hindered, and it's hindered clearly because of, and whether that's the start of his trauma or not, Order 66. So I just find that so interesting that it's not like punching us in the face. We're flashing back and people are like, oh, cool, Order 66. And some people are like, oh, again, Order 66, really? But when you look at it from this character's perspective, it's so crucial that we're seeing that because of the lasting effects of this stuff. And it's, again, I go back to that whole thing where people...
It's also explaining his journey emotionally, like literally where he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I don't always bring this up, but I think it's relevant here. Like, my wife survived the Sandy Hook shootings, and people are like, on 12/14 every year, they change their profile picture to a green background with a tree on it, with names on it, and then they move on the next day. Every time we go to a movie theater or something and she hears a sound, she's like, gets nervous. She turns around or something. It's like that stays with you. That's never going to leave you. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Lacey, like these stories, are tools that people use as comfort or as like support, because sometimes with trauma, company and relating to somebody is very important. And for like little kids who deal with trauma or whatever it might be, they see these characters and like these are their heroes. Just like when we were growing up, we had our Star Wars heroes, and they see Grogu and they see what he's going through, and they're going to see him get through it, I think. And become who he was originally supposed to be. It just took a longer period of time because of what he went through. So I agree so much that this show is way deeper than some people give it credit for. You just need to see it. You need to see that those parts of it. I do think they'll be more direct with that in this season than they have in previous seasons. I think there's going to be way more tension and drama, and I think it's just going to be bigger in every aspect this third season of The Mandalorian. But with Grogu, I really think we're at the point now where we have Book of Boba Fett, and he did what he did there, which is we saw him finally use his powers in a more Jedi type of way, not a militant, aggressive warrior style where he's like
bad behavior picked up from Mandalorian. Yeah,
right. He's holding that beast for the first time using the Force, and Mando just kills the thing. And then he does the similar thing with the Rancor, but he lulls it to sleep. It's like he's understanding what it is to be a Jedi again, maybe. And I think that we're finally going beyond the it's Grogu, action figure, cute, love him, Baby Yoda and stuff, to this is a real character with an arc, and we're about to see some serious stuff. So people are tired of the Baby Yoda stuff, and that's good. You should be, because I think now I think this season is going to belong to Grogu as much as it will all the Mandalorian stuff. I think we're in for a real character arc here, and we're going to see why they're showing us this Order 66 stuff. So I think it's just very important for them to keep showing us this, because it does tie the whole story of Star Wars together in terms of the saga, but also just shows you that these empires, it's not just like lingering stormtroopers and stuff that last after the Empire. It's all this stuff that the Empire did that takes a real long time to recover beyond dirty, messy planets and stuff like that.
Well, right. Another thing to add here is that it seems in the trailer that there's a moment, at least, where Bo-Katan is privately with Grogu. Because we got that line, you think your dad's the only Mandalorian. And one thing that I think those characters can relate on is the fact that if Grogu is still dealing with Order 66, the basic execution of his entire world, of all of his people, that would be something that Bo-Katan would relate to, considering the whole point of this series is about how the Mandalorian people are still trying to survive after their entire population and world was just annihilated.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking, and this is just a bit too, and there's probably a simple explanation. How are Bo-Katan and Grogu having a conversation? Is this a sign that he speaks?
Or she's just assuming. She's just talking to him like you talk to little kids and babies and
I
dogs
know,
and
but
cats.
what would
and...
he be doing that she would go, you think your
Mando could
dad's
just
the
be
only
there,
Mandalorian?
but just out of the shot. He
Yeah.
could be a,
That's what I'm saying. Like, she could just talk to him thinking like, oh, he understands me type thing.
Yeah. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting.
I get what you're
'cause, like,
saying, though.
what would he be doing? You know what I mean? Like looking surprised, like, why are there two of you? And she's like, oh, you think he's the only one? Like he's been around other Mandalorians.
I do think you brought up a great point though, James.
What is the connection there between those two characters that it seemingly feels like that trailer is leading to him, Grogu, having a realization that maybe Din Djarin isn't necessarily the only person that he could look up to, and there's other options, there's other roads, like any teenager being like,
I took
maybe
that as
my
literal.
parents aren't the best people in the
no,
world. Maybe I should believe my friends and, explore.
I took it more literal though, because in the trailers they show multiple shots of like Mandalorians coming up over a cave, coming up over a hill, and then that shot where she's talking to Grogu is in a cave. So I took it literally like, oh, you thought it's going to be like one of those moments where they have to team up or meet up with everybody, and those people show up and Grogu has some type of reaction like, why? And she's just like, oh, you thought he was the only one? And like, here's an army of Mandalorians behind her. That's how I took it.
That's a good point. And I don't know if you meant this, James, but do you think of it as Grogu thinks like that whole thing, like I have no people, like Han Solo said in Solo? It's like he thinks he's the only one of his kind. He doesn't know where his people are. And he thought he related to Din because he thought, oh, you're a loner too. I'm a loner, So like that could be too. And I know we're a little bit getting way off topic, and I'm fine with that. I think we laid out the bulk of the core of the importance of 66, but
I think if you're asking the question, the importance of Grogu's Order 66 experience, it's because that is fundamentally the same idea as the execution of all of the Mandalorian people, which seems to be the theme for season 3.
Yeah. And he is do we think he's like becoming a Mandalorian? Because he chose to go back?
By the end of this season, I think they're going to do some type of like, you're a Mandalorian now or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hope it's not one of those things where
he already is clan of 2, right? But he didn't accept that.
He has the mudhorn on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Or so he did accept it.
Yes.
And Grogu has the necklace, doesn't he?
He does.
So is he already a Mandalorian then? He just doesn't have
no, because his dad just got kicked out. So by association, he lost his membership.
He lost his membership.
I
mean, can no longer.
Like if I stole a $1.50 hot dog from Costco, my son wouldn't allowed to be into.
Because I think like in our heads, we always think about him more like, oh, he's Jedi, right? But it's like, well, Jedi's a religion, right? So he could still have the Force and not be Jedi. But what is he when Din is clan of 2, the Mudhorn or whatever, and then he's got the armor, he chose the armor, and there was something else too that I was just thinking, something relating to, it was just that they regularly refer to him as a foundling, and it's like, oh, well, he's not just like a random kid missing. They're like referring to him as what they call Mandalorian people who don't have families or whatever. So it's like
they do call him the foundling. Yeah.
I wonder if at some point, like if you were to sit Filoni in a room and be like, hey, at this point, is he a Mandalorian or what are we talking? He's like, oh, he's been Mandalorian since season 1. Like that's the way we think of him. I wonder if that and we're just like not picking up on that because that's not the point of the story. But yes, that is like what we were alluding to when we did this early on. And it's like, we just haven't really put that together. I don't know. I think maybe it's because people think he needs to have a helmet or he needs to have armor or something that makes him Mandalorian. But at this point, it still does feel like he could consider himself Mandalorian. I don't know. It's interesting.
I don't think that I know there's been, for whatever reason, the past year, all of a sudden, it's cool to like criticize and take shots at the Mandalorian, which I think is insane because the Mandalorian is.
I don't understand that, but then the same people will turn around and be like, "Oh my god, amazing trailer!" And I'm like, "You literally just said Mandalorian sucked like 2 months ago."
There were people who said they didn't like the trailer too, though. I was surprised at that. So yeah, you can't please everybody, and some people aren't aren't going to be more critical, and that's fine. But one of the criticisms I've heard, which I understand it, and it's valid to have it, is that the reunion happened too quick. It happened on a different show, so it's possible that people didn't watch Book of Boba Fett and are like, "Wait a minute. Last time on The Mandalorian, you were crying and he was going away with Luke Skywalker. Now you guys are just rolling in this N1 right now." And I understand that. But I like to think that most people are watching both shows. So if you missed it, you missed it. And that's your problem, in my opinion. That's how I stand up by that. I'm not going to care too much about that. It's like, you missed it, you missed it. I don't know you. I don't care, but it's, I think it's important, because Grogu did make that choice to go back to Din Djarin. And it's like, it goes back to that first time he saw him when he was in his little egg, and we don't know how he got to that place and what happened in those 30 years, 29, 30 years between 66 and Mando episode 1, which is called The Mandalorian. I think it was called The Mandalorian, right? The first episode? Am I not crazy?
What?
I think so. The first episode.
The first episode of The Mandalorian was called The Mandalorian.
Sorry,
oh, yes.
For a second, I was just picturing Luke going like, "Now what?"
Yeah. But I'm thinking, James, you're right. Like, I don't think he was rescued either. Like, I think he was abducted, and I think a lot of things went down, and then they lost track of him somehow. So
in a
maybe
world
in between
of infinite stories. Like, I think we're just thinking he got rescued because they were killing all the Jedi and he's alive. So clearly somebody helped him out because he's a baby and he can't help himself. But I don't think that's necessarily the only solution. And they could subvert some expectations by saying, no, he did not make it out of Order 66. It sucked.
I think all these people in Grogu's life right now, whether it's Ahsoka, even Peli Motto, who's like a nurturing presence, Luke and Din Djarin, there are others, but I'll go with those. Like, offer him something to help him move forward, and you have Ahsoka and Luke who are like clearly doing something to unlock his past to help him reattach with the Force and connect with the Force again. But also that churns up all the bad memories. But then you have Din Djarin, who gives him belief in the present and the future, which is his family now. So. It's good to reconcile with your past and for the good, and then deal with the bad as you need to. But also, you need that person who's going to carry you forward, because, again, you're not defined by your past, and you can't live in the past because that never helps you. Because then one day you'll wake up and say, like, why did I live? What did I live for? What was my purpose? Din is like his sort of reason for moving forward and being who he wants to be now, which is an evolved version of who he was. So it's the whole quick reunion thing. Like, I'm fine with that because of that reason, because he needs to be with him and he needs all those people in his life for varying reasons. And I think it's just like, and ultimately on the surface level thing, it's just like so like crazy to see prequel elements and prequel, like big, massive prequel moments jumping over the original trilogy and still hitting really hard right now.
Yeah. It makes me optimistic that the sequel trilogy will be much more liked years from now.
Yeah.
Not that we don't like it. I'm saying other people that are like so against it. Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if you guys have other points for it, because I know we're up on time a bit, but this is definitely one of those conversations we'll have to explore when we understand or they show us more of
as
what
they
really
develop
happened.
it. Yeah.
So, yeah, and revisiting this conversation to see like what made sense, what doesn't make sense, but ultimately like seeing that character arc for Grogu, which I'm really excited about. I'm even more excited about it now.
I can't wait for the show to come back. Oh my gosh, so excited.
Yeah. Yep. So any final thoughts on this topic or anything else before we hop on out?
Not really, but I think I'm gonna cry. I think the show's gonna make me cry this season. Again.
I know, again. Yeah, true. All right, cool. So let us know in the comments. Let us know on social media. Let us know via email if you're shy, or if you're a patron on the Discord, what you think of this conversation. Order 66 still hitting hard. Well after it happened 30 years, and Grogu is just dealing with it and confronting it now. So it is going to be a big, important part of this story. So let us know what your thoughts are on that. But as Lacey said before, make sure you're subbed to the pod on your preferred audio platform, or of course the channel. Thank you so much for everyone who's been subscribing and supporting us as we started over with a new channel. But everything else, marching forward. So you can find me on Twitter at Johnny Hoey. My movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. Tomorrow, barring any unforeseen incidents, we're putting out an episode on Fight Club, which I shouldn't have just talked about, but I did. James, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Myra Trunks.
Lacey.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Lacey Gilleran, on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran, and you can also find TRB on TikTok now at TRB Podcasts, where we're putting up shorts and all different types of cool stuff.
Yeah, and make sure you're checking out James's Bad Batch reviews on the channel, churning through every episode. And I'm digging the Bad Batch.
Oh my God, and there's a Willow documentary coming out. So get ready for me to nonstop talk about that.
All right, so we will see you all on Thursday night with another live episode of the podcast. But until then, we hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next time right here on TRB. See you around, kids.